All right, we're gonna get started. We may have other participants join in as the presentation goes on. Good morning, everybody from the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. We are so happy to have you join us this morning. Today's information session will cover some topics post-admission, so getting your I-20, getting ready for your visa interview, and some information on housing. My name is Michelle Awando. I am the Assistant Director for the International Undergraduate Admissions Office, and I'm joined today by my colleagues in the ISSS office, so International Student and Scholar Services, and I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Charter Morris. I'm Director of International Student and Scholar Services, and I'm joined today with my colleagues. Trung, would you like to introduce yourself?
You're muted.
Hello, everyone. My name is Trung Nguyen. I am the Associate Director for International Student and Scholar Services.
I'm Casey Akins. I'm the CEVS Coordinator.
All right, and a few housekeeping rules. Char has everybody muted upon entry, and you'll be able to ask questions and unmute yourself at the end of the presentation. However, if you do have questions in the meantime, feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll try to answer if we can in the chat box, but if not, we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. And we will start with a quick update on scholarships and how to defer your application if needed. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Let me know if you're seeing it. Perfect. So just a quick update on freshman scholarship awards. All of you should have received an email from the scholarships office around March 7th or March 8th, letting you know that the consolidated scholarship offers are available for you to view in MyBama. These are the steps that you should be able to do if you have set up your MyBama account. So you should be able to see if you were awarded any scholarships. You'll have to log into MyBama. You'll go to the student tab. You'll locate, and I have a printout here. So MyBama, student tab, and then the student financial aid section. And if you were selected for a scholarship, just keep in mind federal financial aid, which is the FAFSA for our students, only applies to domestic US citizens, so that will not apply to any international students. So if you were selected for a scholarship, you will be able to see that in your MyBama. If you were not selected for a scholarship, you will see the no award information is available for this aid year. So you should be able to put your aid year in the box and see any offers that were sent to you. I've been told that you can print out a letter from MyBama, which you can probably submit to Charter's office as proof of financial documentation. Since this is a screenshot of my MyBama, I don't have a scholarship, so I can't walk you through the next steps, but you should be able to do that. If you do have questions on that, I'm more than happy to help, or I'm sure Charter can help you as well. And some information on our deferral policy. So I know that the wait times for the visa are different across different countries. So if you do not get a visa, or you get a visa too late and you're not able to join us on campus for summer or fall courses, you do have the option to request for a deferral. That means that our office will change your term of admission. You do not have to reapply. You do not have to pay the application fee again. We will internally do that for you. There are a couple of rules though. You can do the term change one time only. So, and you can do it up to 2 semesters ahead. So if your initial application is for summer, we can defer to either fall 2023 or spring 24. So we'll start deferring to 2024 terms when the actual 2024 application opens, which is usually around August 1st. Please choose your deferral term carefully. For example, if you're a summer 2023 student and you choose to defer to fall, but you still can come in the fall, unfortunately, we will not be able to defer again, so you'll have to reapply. So please take some time and consider the timeline, and if you are actually able to get a visa for the next term you're requesting, okay? If you were awarded a scholarship, please contact the scholarships office first. Ask for a deferral of the award. If that's possible, then you can contact our office and let us know that you've talked to scholarships and you would like to defer your admission term as well. Please allow about 2 to 3 weeks for a new admission letter to be issued if you're deferring to a 2023 term. If you're going for a 2024 term, that may take longer since we're processing that in August, okay? And there are 2 ways to do that. To request a deferral, please only choose one of the options. Do not do them both. It just creates confusion within the office, and it just lengthens the time that we take to issue the new admit letter. So you can email our office, intladm@ua.edu. Please specify the term you want to defer to. Or you can do it through your applicant portal, and there's an application update form that you can click on. It will take you to a screen that it will just ask for your name and the term you want to defer. Okay, so very simple. You can email us or do it through your portal. Just choose the one of the options. Okay, that's all the information. If you do have questions on either of these 2 topics, you can email me at intl@ua.edu. All right, so now we'll start with the ISSS presentation. Charter.
So sorry, just trying to get unmuted and switch to my screen. So can everybody see the first slide there? Okay, so again, I'm the Director of International Student and Scholar Services. The purpose of our office here is to provide visa support for international students, faculty, researchers, and visiting scholars. So we will be working with you to issue I-20s or DS-2019s if you're coming on a J-1 visa. During your time here, we will work with you throughout to make sure that you're maintaining your visa status, but also provide a lot of cultural support. We do a lot of programming to help students get integrated to campus and get engaged. So we do a lot of those things. Our office doesn't do admissions. We don't do scholarships, but we work very closely with our counterparts in the Office of Admissions and the Office of Scholarships. So, but just to be aware, we don't make those types of decisions. But we work hand in hand with them. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a good bit of information about how to get your I-20 and to be able to get to your visa appointment and hopefully arrive on campus this fall or summer or next spring, whichever term you happen to be admitted to. So with that, I wanted to just briefly kind of go over our office contacts and information and how you can find the resources that you need, and the ones that we're going to reference throughout. And then Casey's going to take over and kind of talk you through how to get the I-20, and then I'll take back over and go through the visa process itself. So our office is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. until 4:45 p.m. We do not work Saturdays or Sundays, and be aware that we are in the Central Time Zone here in the United States. We are located, of course, in B.B. Comer Hall. You can find our website. If you go to international.ua.edu, you'll find the International Student and Scholar Services section on there. You can contact us by email. That's the easiest way to get any information that you might need. If you can't find it yourself, or if you have questions, you can email us at international@ua.edu. This is different than the international admissions email address that Michelle had shared earlier. And of course, you can call us at 205-348-5402. One of the things about our website is it has a lot of information. When I say a lot of information, very literally, if I printed every single page that we have on our International Student Scholar Services site, it's about a 250-page book. It is not it is not small by any means, and we do that because we know you have a lot of questions, a lot of things that you need to know about your move here, about how to maintain your visa status, and it's all there in some way, shape, or form. This is not to say that's the only way you can get the information, but I can almost always bet that the question is answered through the website. So when you go to the long URL here, international.ua.edu/ISSS, that's very hard to remember. If you just go to is.ua.edu, that's the shortened URL. It'll drop you here on the main page. And most of the information you need is here under the future and new student section. Once you've enrolled at the university, the current student section is where you're going to find most of the information about maintaining your visa status. So the next part that we're going to really kind of focus on, and you may be already through some of this, but I just kind of want to take you through the process of going from your admission to getting your I-20 or your DS 2019 to actually getting your visa. And so we're going to start off with the first step in that process, which is getting your I-20 or your DS 2019. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Casey, who is going to lead us through the next slides.
Thank you, Charter. So when you are preparing to get your I-20 or your DS 2019, after you've received your official admission letter from undergrad admissions, we'll want you to submit a copy of that, as well as a scan of, well, first of all, the I-20 DS 2019 request form. Make sure you have that filled out. If there's things that you're unsure about with it, we can help you with that if you'd like to email us. The most important thing, though, that we look at really is number 3, your proof of funding, to see if you do have enough funds to cover the $51,662 if you're coming in the spring or fall. And then summer costs, you add an additional $15,040 to that. So it'll be $666,702 for that. So we just want to make sure that you can cover your costs for the first year here, and then your passport. If you are currently in the US and you're going to be transferring to UA and you have an F1 visa, we ask that you also submit that. If you have a B1, B2 visitor visa or something else, we really don't need to see that. We only need to see if you already have an F1 visa. So processing time, it takes us about a week from the time of submission to being able to review your documents. Sometimes that can take a little longer, especially right now we're in peak season. So we have a lot of requests, excuse me, not only from undergrad, but also grad students as well. So we're processing all of those. But if you ever do have questions, please feel free to email us. We, sometimes things happen, there's glitches in the system, and if you haven't heard from us, always reach out to us. All right, so due to being able to give you enough time to go to the visa interview, we do have a deadline for requests for each semester. So for the summer semester, May 30th will be the start of classes. So April 28th will be the last day that you can receive an I-20. For fall of 2023, August 23rd is the start of classes. So July 14th, we won't be able to submit any more, issue any more I-20s after July 14th. So if you're coming in fall, make sure that you have that submitted by that day, if you haven't already. And then for spring, January 10th will be the start date in 2024. So December 8th will be the last day we can issue an I-20 for spring. So the reason we do this is also to make sure some countries have a lot, are very backlogged on their visa appointments. Sometimes it's hard to get them, and just various other issues that you could encounter. So we want to make sure you have plenty of time to get your information in, us to get you the I-20, and you can get your visa appointment secured. Okay. So most of you, if not all of you, are going to be F1 students. Those who are J1, usually going to come from either a non-degree exchange program or a government sponsored program, such as from Turkey or Thailand. So if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to us to see which one that you think you should be. But for most of you, F1 will be what you'll receive. So you'll receive the 920. All right. So the reason we ask you to submit your passport is because we want to make sure that everything on your I-20 or your DS 2019 matches your passport. So if you have multiple names, but you don't go by all those names, that's fine. But for the I-20, we have to make sure that everything matches your passport. So when you're filling out the information section on page 1, make sure that you include everything as it is on your passport, and make sure that you have your birth date as well on there. In the US, we go by the month, date, year instead of day, month, year formula. So if your birthday, sometimes we can't tell if, like, for instance, your birthday is May 3rd. So, and it's from a different formula. So make sure that you kind of write it out to let us know like what it is. And then we'll also look at your passport to make sure that we have it matched up. So unless you're already in the US, you won't have a US address, so you don't have to worry about filling that part out either. The most important thing is the information on your passport that matches, but we'll also have a copy of your passport as well, so we can double check that. Okay, so if you do have dependents, make sure that you submit their information. So on page 1 of the I-20 request form, on section 2, we have information for if you have a spouse, you can provide their information, as well as like if you have any children that you'll bring over. We also ask that you submit their passports as well, because we want to do the same thing that we're doing with your passport. We want to make sure that all the information on their F2 I-20 is the same as what's on your what's on their passport. So also be aware that for each dependent that you'll have, you'll need to add $5,000 per dependent. That the cost that we ask for you to show for only covers you. So if you have any dependents, we ask for a minimum of $5,000 to be able to see that you will be able to cover their expenses, you know, living expenses, food, things like that, travel, while they're in the US here with you. Parents and siblings don't qualify as F2 or J2 dependents, so we can't issue any documents for them. We can only issue for your spouse or your children. Okay, so on page 2, we have this breakdown of the financial information. So, you know, when we're looking at this, it's not only tuition costs that we're seeing, but also health insurance, as well as your living expenses, and then other fees from the university. So the total cost for at least the spring and fall semesters is $51,662. If you're going to come in the summer, there's that little asterisk up there that shows you have to add an additional $15,040 to that as well, as far as tuition and fees. So if you're coming for summer, we want to make sure that we can see at least $66,702, and this per year, to cover tuition for the 9 months that you'll be here, or if you're in summer, the 12 months that you'll be here, as well as all of your expenses for the entire year. So food, housing, things like that, travel. We want to make sure that you have everything available. And then when we're looking at your finances, we want to make sure that when you're submitting documents, you don't have to submit a year's worth of your bank statement. Really, all we need to see is either the first page of a bank statement that shows a number on there, or even just a letter from your bank confirming that you do have X amount of money. And we can do the conversion rates and everything, so you don't have to submit in US dollars. We can take care of that here. One thing to be aware of when we're looking at finances, we cannot accept an employment letter, salary statements, credit card statements, real estate statements, or things like this. You can find what's not acceptable on page 2 of the I-20 request form. Really, we need to see liquid funds. And if you have a scholarship, that of course applies. Okay. So a lot of you may have to have several different kinds of funds that you submit, and that's totally fine. A family funds or sponsor funds, your own personal funds, just need to see a bank statement. We used to require it that it only came from parents, but now we've opened it to where your funds can come from anywhere. So as long as you can show that you have money to cover your expenses here, then you can submit that bank statement. Be aware, you'll also be able to have to prove that when you go to the visa interview. For the university funds, so if you have a scholarship, graduate assistantship or graduate fellowship does not apply to you as undergrads, but you'll have a few $1,000s, or if you have a full tuition scholarship, you can submit that and we'll take that off of the total cost of that $51,662. As far as I'm aware, I don't think there's any full scholarships that will cover all of your living expenses as well. So even if you do have full funding from the university, please be aware that you'll still need to show that you have funds to cover your living expenses while here. So for those who have scholarships, you will have to show both your scholarship letter and personal funds or family sponsor funds. If you have an award or a scholarship or a grant from another from a government, from another source, such as like a government sponsorship, that's fine too. Just submit that and we'll be able to cover that for you. Okay, so if you are currently in the US, you can find this on page 3 of the I-20 request form. This is the SEVIS transfer information. You do not have to fill this out if you're an initial student and you're already home. Unless you're transferring from an institution in the US, you do not need to fill this out. But if you do, you'll need to make sure, if you are going to be transferring, you'll need to make sure that you have our school code for you're an F1, or our program number if you are a J1. You can find that here on the slides, as well as on the I-20 request form and our website. So if you're filling that out, we just need to know like what your SEVIS number is, what your visa status is. Are you F1 or J1? Are you in good standing? Are you active? Do you have an active SEVIS record? And then some information about your school, when you're going to be transferring to UA, if you're working on OPT or CPT, and then just some information from your international student advisor at the current institution that you're at.
And with that, once you have been issued an I-20, this is what it's going to look like. Now the I-20 is a 3-page document. Page 1 really has the most relevant information regarding your degree program. And we do have information on our website where you can find a breakdown of all the sections of the I-20 so that you understand the information that's contained within it. Really, the most important thing to most students are the SEVIS ID number. You'll need that to pay your SEVIS fee. You're going to look at your program, which includes your degree level, your major, your I-20 report date, your session start date, and your anticipated graduation date or end date. Typically for undergraduate students, we issue I-20s for 10 semesters. So it will be 5 years, or actually, I think it comes out to 5.5 years is the way it calculates on this. It's not to say that you're going to take 5.5 years. It's just we calculate this based on the minimum full-time enrollment, how long it will take to complete a degree based on minimum credit hours required to graduate. So you have that listed on there. Like I said, it'll be 5 to 5.5 years, or 10 to 11 semesters, depending on that, so that you have plenty of time to complete your degree. One thing I want to say is about the major. With a major that's listed on the I-20 is the official major on record with Homeland Security. So Homeland Security uses the Department of Education's list of majors. This is the U.S. Department of Education. And what the U.S. Department of Education might call a major may be different from what the University of Alabama calls its degree programs or its major. So you might find that you have been admitted to geological sciences, and yet the major is listed officially as geology on the zip code or on the Department of Education's list. And so that might print here as geology rather than geological sciences. Just be aware that those codes have been matched properly. All of our degree programs are matched to an official SIP code or CIP code. And so what is printed on there is correct, generally, unless it's really far afield from your major. Don't worry about the difference in the naming scheme if you see any kind of differences there. So those are the basics for the I-20. There may be a few of you who will be coming on a J-1 visa. The question came up earlier, and I know Casey addressed this. Which one do you choose? 99% of you will be coming on an F-1 visa. That's the most common student visa type. J-1 visas are specifically for exchange programs. So for our student exchanges, we have a few exchange programs where we host maybe 20 students per year on exchange. And then we have government sponsored programs. So students who are coming from funded programs where the government has provided the scholarship, your government may require as part of that scholarship that you come on a J-1 visa. Typically, the governments that we see that do this are Turkey, Thailand, Vietnam. There's just a handful of government-sponsored programs where they make that a requirement of the program. So if you're not on one of those scholarships, don't worry about the J-1, just apply as an F-1. That is what you should do. But for those few who might be coming on a J-1, this is what your document will look like. Very similarly, it'll have a SEVIS ID, it'll have the program information, it'll have a start and end date, as well as the SIP code affiliated with your program of study. Now, we are going to get into the part, and I know a lot of you are maybe at this stage right now where maybe you already have your I-20. So the next steps, after we issue the I-20, you'll start by paying your SEVIS fee. Now, the SEVIS fee is something that's paid once per the life of the record. So if we issue a SEVIS I-20, for the life of that I-20, you have one SEVIS ID and you pay a SEVIS fee affiliated with that. Now, there are times where people will have multiple SEVIS records in their degree program, and each time they get a different SEVIS record, like a completely new I-20, like if there's a break in studies, they'll have to pay a different fee. But assuming that you have one I-20 and you come on that visa and you begin your studies, you will keep that same SEVIS ID throughout the whole program. And it's possible that you can transfer that SEVIS record to a new school to begin a second degree, and that you will continue with that, and you'll never have to pay a SEVIS fee again. So it's typically a one-time fee unless you have a break in studies and have to get a new I-20 to come back to the US. In the future, you'll pay one time on this fee. The fee is $350 for F1 students, and it's paid at the fmjfee.com website. That is an official government website, even though it has the COM designation there. You will need our school code and, of course, your SEVIS ID number to be able to pay that fee. That fee has to be paid before your visa interview. Now, for J1 students, the fee is a little bit lower. It's $220. And so again, same situation. You pay that fee before the visa interview. So you've gotten your I-20. You've now paid your SEVIS fee, and all you need to be able to pay that SEVIS fee is your SEVIS ID number and the school code. You'll be able to do that. The next step will be to start your visa application. Now, the visa application is called the DS-160. You'll fill this out online. On our page for incoming students on getting your I-20 and your visa, we have a whole section on getting the visa where we have links to all of this information, the DS-160 form, the DS-160 application page, the FAQ page that they have set up for this, and even an example form that's been officially created by the Department of State so that you would be able to have some guidance on how to complete the form. We do also have some information about a couple of details on when you're completing your DS-160 about putting us down as your school. You know, when it gets to the section where it's asking you who is inviting you to the United States, it's the university. We're sponsoring you to come here. And so it has the details on how to complete that on our webpage. So you'll find all those answers and these links through our webpage. It's very easy to find that so that you can complete the DS-160. If you have any dependents, if you have an F2 spouse or child or J2 spouse or child, you are going to complete separate DS-160s for each of them. Now, if there are any Canadians in the room or Bahamians, the US government has an agreement with Canada and the Bahamas that visas are not required to enter the US, though you do need to have a valid I-20 or a valid DS-2019. You just don't go through the visa application process. So that is one benefit. So if we do have any Canadians or Bahamians on the chat today, then be aware that there is that visa waiver for students coming from those countries. Now, after you've done your DS-160, you're going to want to schedule your visa interview. You're going to want to work with the US embassy or consulate that is closest to you, that has jurisdiction over where you live. So if you are a citizen of Nigeria, but you happen to be living in France, you're going to probably book with the consulate in France. If you are in one part of your country and there's a consulate that oversees your area of the country that's nearest to your home, then you're going to work with that consulate more than likely because it has jurisdiction over where you live. Now, prior to scheduling your visa interview, you can check the visa wait times. This is on the State Department website. Literally, you can Google US visa wait times, and it should bring this up as the very first search item. It brings you to a page where you can enter the city name of the location where the consulate is. So if you're in Hanoi, you can write Hanoi. If you want to put Lagos, you can put Lagos in there, and it'll bring up the approximate visa wait times. Now, that is just to say that is approximate. That tells you what the wait times are like. So that gives you a better idea of things. Don't look at this as the only information. You will have to go into their visa booking system to actually book an appointment. Now, in countries where there are multiple consulate locations, so like India, China, Nigeria, where there are more than one location that you can choose from, you may find better wait times at one of the other consular locations. If they allow you to book with that other consulate, that might be the better option, even if it's less convenient for you. So just be aware that that is something to consider. I will say one more thing about visa appointments and visa scheduling. A lot of people have had challenges getting visa appointments on time. So let's say you've been admitted for August start date for fall semester, and you find that the only available visa appointments are in October. What you need to do is go ahead and book that appointment as the earliest possible appointment you can get, because the only way you're going to have your appointment expedited is if you have an appointment in the system already. So you have to first book the first available appointment, and they will always tell you that, because inevitably there's sometimes earlier visa appointments available when you go in the system to actually book your appointment, and it may be a moot point. Now, it may not be as early as you would like it to be, but as long as you can get an appointment that is before your start date and it gives them a reasonable amount of time to process the visa, you should be okay. But if, again, you can only find a visa appointment that is after your start date, book that appointment and then go back to the consulate webpage and follow their instructions about how to expedite that appointment. Typically within 60 days of your start date, they will allow you to move your appointment that you've booked to an earlier date within that 60-day window, but you have to be within 60 days of that window to be able to do that. So just be aware of that. Now going on, let's say you booked your appointment, everything's ready. What do you need to take to your visa interview? So generally, the following documents are what you require. You need a passport that will be valid for at least 6 months beyond at least your date of entry to the US. So if you have a passport that's going to be expiring, 2 years from now, that's okay. The way the rules are written is your passport should be valid for 6 months beyond your period of stay in the US. But when you're coming for a 4 to 5 year degree, obviously your passport might expire, especially if you come from a country that only issues 5-year passports. So don't worry about that. Just be aware that your passport needs to be valid for at least 6 months beyond the date that you enter the US for the first time, with the assumption that you are going to renew your passport after you enter the US. The other things that you need to take with you are your DS-160 visa application confirmation page. So you need proof that you completed your DS-160. You need to bring proof of your application fee payment, so the visa application fee. If you have uploaded a digital copy of your photo for your passport photo, and that's a 5 centimeter by 5 centimeter photo that follows the passport photo requirements. If you've uploaded a digital copy, that should be fine. But if you had any problems or the upload fails, you'll have to take a physical copy of a photo. You'll need to get a passport photo made and take it with you to the visa interview. You'll need to take your I-20 or your DS-2019, and you'll need to take proof of your SEVIS fee payment. You'll need to take a copy of your admissions letter, the same one that you submitted to us. And you'll need to take the proof of funding that you used to obtain your I-20. When we ask for your proof of funding, you're submitting digital copies. We don't need the original documents. But if you've gotten a scholarship and you're also covering your living expenses through personal or family funds, you'll take that evidence that you used to get your I-20 to the embassy for your interview, because they're going to review the same documents that we used to issue the I-20. In addition to all of that, there might be other documents that are asked for. They may ask for proof of your academics. If you're going to a university in America, they're assuming that you're graduating from a high school somewhere else, or that you've already attended a university abroad. So they may ask for you to bring in your mark sheets or your transcripts, your academic records. They may ask for a copy of your diploma. They may ask for any certificates from the schools that you've attended. They may ask for standardized test scores, such as your TOEFL exam, your IELTS exam, your SAT or ACT if you were receiving scholarship. They may ask for more details about your intent to return home. One thing that we're going to talk about, and you'll hear me mention again, the #1 reason for a visa denial, and I need to really emphasize that, the #1 reason that a US visa is denied is because the applicant could not establish their intent to depart the US at the end of their program. That they could not establish what is called their non-immigrant intent. So the way you establish your non-immigrant intent is through ties to the home country. You would have to show that you have a home to return to, that you have family to return to, a potential job that you'll be going back to, that you stand to inherit property or ownership or control of your family's business, or any of these things that show your significant ties to your home country. That helps to establish those ties. Now, I will say for undergraduate students, the State Department has told visa officers that they're not supposed to scrutinize applicants for undergraduate visas, for undergraduate programs, the same way they would for a graduate student. But at the same time, this is something that comes up. So you need to be able to kind of address that. You need to be able to address what your academic plans are, what your overall plans are, and you need to be truthful about that. You also need to be able to explain how you're going to pay for all of your education, living, and travel costs for the duration of your program. So as you remember, Casey highlighted, we need 1 year. We need your 9 months of academic expenses and 12 months of living expenses. If you're beginning in the summer, you have to show 12 months of academic expenses and 12 months of living expenses, but we have a 12-month snapshot. And you may be able to show, I have money in the bank to be able to pay for that first year. But they're going to ask, well, this is a 4-year degree. How do you pay for year 2 and year 3 and year 4 if you're using all of your family's savings to just cover the first year of expenses? And so what they need to do is show that you have a reasonable ability to continue to pay those other expenses at the same rate. So you have to have a plan. You don't have to necessarily have liquid funds for years 2, 3, 4, and potentially 5, but you do have to show that you have the ability to cover those other years, because maybe your family has income that will meet those extra needs. Maybe you have investments that will pay off over time. Who knows? The scholarship is renewable. These are the things that you would show as your ability to pay for your educational expenses over time. You should also consult the embassy or consulate website to see what they have to say about any other country-specific requirements. There may be additional requirements that are just specific to your home country that they have to see before you're allowed to leave. Maybe like a passage of a national exam, for instance, or something like that. So just check their website to see if they have any additional documentation they require or recommend. For your visa interview prep, again, we have some great information on our website. We have a link to this page, 10 points to remember when applying for your non-immigrant visa. This is extremely helpful. It is not flashy, it's all text, but I think it's extremely valuable information. Again, number 1, ties to the home country and your residence abroad. Number 2 is to speak English, of course. If you were coming as a tourist, they have translators for you. They don't expect you to have perfect English, but if you're coming for an academic degree program in an institution where English is the medium of instruction, then they're expecting you to be able to speak proficiently in English. You need to speak for yourself. When you go to this page, it explains this a little bit more, but what that means is don't use rehearsed answers that you've studied on YouTube. There are a lot of bloggers out there. I know because I've accidentally watched some of these videos, and now the algorithm pushes me tons of how to succeed in your visa interview. And I watch some of these videos, and sometimes the advice is good, and sometimes the advice is really terrible. So take free advice available on YouTube with a grain of salt. It's not always very helpful. That being said, you have to speak to yourself. You have to be able to answer the questions posed to you and explain why you're pursuing a degree. Why did you choose the University of Alabama and not some other university? Well, it's because they gave me a scholarship. Perfect. That explains why. Like, or they had a great opportunity for applications where they did a free app week, and my friends, also applied there, and they've succeeded, and they've told me how great it is and how good the school is, and on and on and on. Or the rankings were good. You need to be able to explain that. Whatever's true for you, you need to be able to say that. You need to be able to show how that program fits your overall plans. Let's say you're going to do a degree in computer science, then what is your long-term plans? Oh, I would love to get into that as a field. It has a great potential for the future. You do need to be brief in your answers, maintain a positive attitude, bring the supporting documents, be able to talk to anything like if you have dependents that will be remaining at home or any other special considerations, but in the end, be honest. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that in the visa interview process, the answers that you give are recorded, and visa officers at every U.S. embassy and consulate in the world share that information. It goes into a system, and if you are denied your visa and you go back to interview again and you change your answers, and it's not because there's a valid change in the situation, but if you say something completely different, they'll look at that as a lie. And so what you need to do is just be honest, be truthful about the situation. And if something does change later and you do have to go for a second visa interview, be able to explain why that might be different. Okay. So you got your I-20, you paid your CVIS fee, you did your DS-160, you've gone through your visa interview. Now you're just waiting, right? After the visa interview, most visas are issued within, just a few days, if not 2 weeks. That typically is the time frame. So just a few days to 2 weeks for, I would say, 90% of your visa applicants. About 10% of visa applicants may be sent to what's called administrative processing. And so what that is if for any reason your field of study flagged an issue like, hey, this has got dual use, it has possible military implications or something else, they may send this to have an external review by a different government agency just to make sure that you are cleared to be able to begin your program. Now, this clearance is, again, called administrative processing, but most often it's connected to the 221G of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Just be aware, once it goes to administrative processing, there is no controlling how long it might take to clear. So when something goes to administrative processing, usually it's done in a matter of weeks, but sometimes it can take a couple of months or more to clear. Now, you will be asked to provide additional information in order for them to be able to make a determination and clear everything and be able to issue the visa. They may ask for a study plan for your program, in which case you can go onto the catalog and print out the degree requirements for your major. They may ask for other details. This is not unusual. This is usually grad students that we see have this happen, especially in STEM disciplines. But if it's not unusual to see an undergraduate student who's also tagged for administrative processing. In the end, there is nothing that we can do if you're selected for administrative processing. We cannot expedite it. No one can expedite it. Not a congressional representative, not a senator, not even the president of the United States can make this go away. It has to go through its normal processing. If it is taking a very long time, more than 2 months, we can make an inquiry. So we can reach out to them and say, hey, it's been more than 2 months. Can we get an update on this, especially if we're pushing up against the deadline for the start date? But generally speaking, if your visa issuance is delayed and it goes beyond the first week of classes for the semester that you're supposed to start, our only option will be to seek a deferral, to have you apply for a deferral of your admission to a future term. So if your visa has not been issued by the last day of our drop ad or our registration period, which is typically 1 week after classes start in the fall and the spring semesters, and just, I think, 3 days after classes start in summer, then we need to push you to another semester and update your I-20 or your DS-2019 accordingly. Now, let's just say, and this is true for most everybody, your visa has been issued. If your visa has been issued, it will be printed, and it will have an issue date, and it'll have an expiration date. And a lot of people will ask, well, why did I get X length of time on my visa where my friend from X country may have gotten a longer period of time or a shorter period of time? Just be aware that the visa validity may not match your I-20. We issue an I-20 with the expectation that you'll complete your degree in 4 to 5 years. But based on what's called visa reciprocity and agreements between the US government and your home country, you may receive a visa that's longer, either longer or valid for less time than the overall period of time we issued on the I-20. I have seen 3-month visas before. I've seen 6-month visas. I've seen 10-year visas. It is not correlated to the I-20. It is related directly to this reciprocity table, which you can look it up. You can Google US visa reciprocity. It'll take you to the State Department webpage. You can look up your country. You can click on F1 visa and it'll tell you exactly how long is the maximum they're allowed to issue a visa to a citizen of your country. And the one thing that I really want to state is, as much work as you're trying to do to get your visa to come to the US, the visa is only used to enter the US. So your visa only needs to be valid on the day that you're entering or re-entering the US from abroad. So if you're worried about your visa expiring, don't worry, it's going to be okay. As long as you've entered the US, your I-20 will control how long you can stay in the US, or your DS 2019. That controls your visa status while your visa might expire after you've entered. We will go over this again during your orientation. You're going to hear this from us a lot. We have this information on our website. There's a lot of confusion about visa versus visa status, but on the visa itself, don't panic if the visa has not been issued for the full length of your program. It does not mean that you have to leave the United States after you have entered. Your visa expiring in your passport is not a big deal unless you're traveling again, in which case you would have to renew your visa. Now, got your visa, you've got your I-20, you've got everything ready to go. You've got your funds set aside to get here. You are looking forward to becoming part of the Crimson Tide, and we're ready to welcome you. So let's talk about what's next. As you prepare to come, you want to go through some checklists. So the admissions office will have been sending this to you already. You should be already getting contacted by orientation and housing. So there's a lot of things that you need to do before you ever arrive to campus. One thing is to make sure that you pay your deposit. There is a requirement that if you are admitted as an undergrad, you're going to pay a $200 non-refundable enrollment deposit. That is to confirm your intent to come to the university. This step has to be completed before you can apply for orientation or for your housing on campus. So do this as soon as possible. So you'll pay your deposit and then you'll register for what's called BAMA Bound. BAMA Bound is the orientation for all undergraduate students. This is required whether you're a domestic student or an international student. Americans, everybody have to do BAMA Bound. That is where you're going to get your advising, registered for classes. You're going to learn more about the campus, our rules, our regs, everything else. That is run through the Office of Orientation. Then you'll also, if you plan to live on campus, you'll register for housing. You have to apply and apply early. And as Michelle noted, and I think that it's been said, our housing is filling up quickly. Now, one thing to really stress is we think that everyone should live on campus their first year. The thing is, we only have about 9,000 beds on campus, but we have almost 40,000 students. So there is no way we can house all students on campus in our dorms. And if you aren't able to get a spot on campus, you'll have to look to off-campus housing, which is not ideal for a first-time international undergraduate student. So make sure, pay your deposit and start your housing application as soon as you can. There will be immunizations required for all students at the university. These are found on the immunization page on the Student Health Center. You'll find the immunization form where you can upload this. This is measles, mumps, rubella, and this is tuberculosis screening and meningitis for those who are living on campus, I believe. So you can go look at those requirements and what has to be uploaded. And I would recommend take care of those before you leave your home country. Otherwise, you're getting your immunizations once you get here. And then you'll need to do a math placement test as an undergrad. This is all online. That'll help you be placed into the proper math course, depending on your situation. You'll find that all that information. So you want to do those pretty early. Besides that, you want to make sure to get your diploma and your transcripts, certified copies, or final transcripts or mark sheets or exam results to bring to the undergraduate admissions office. They're going to follow up with you on that. But if you submitted scans of these documents so they can make an admissions decision, they may need those final documents from you. And then on our website, we do have this information for incoming students. If you need a SIM card before you arrive, there's actually a couple of companies that you can order your SIM card and they'll send it to you overseas. And that way you can load it in your phone on the plane. And on day one, you have a US phone number. These are actually pretty reasonable rates for their phone lines. So do take a look at that. So when can you come? You've got your visa, you're ready to book your flight, but you're trying to figure out when to book your flight. Now, remember, classes begin for the fall semester, and I'm assuming most of you are here for the fall semester, but we might have a couple of summer admits. But in the fall, August 23rd is the first day of classes. However, orientations take place the week before. So we do recommend, and we even put on our I-20 for you to arrive as early as August 16th, which is a week before the start of classes. So you want to arrive before classes start, if at all possible, so that you're here, you're registered, you're ready to go on day one when classes begin. But you can arrive up to 30 days prior to the report date that is listed on the I-20 or the DS 2019. So classes begin August 23rd. We have a report date of August 16th. That means that you can arrive 30 days before August 16th on July 17th. That is the earliest you can enter the US. Do be aware though, if you come on that earliest possible date, you will not have housing on campus until the dorms open up closer to the start of classes and when orientations take place. So you want to time this fairly carefully. We generally recommend students to come in about a week before classes begin. That is enough time to get here, to get settled, to attend orientation, to get registered, and be ready to go on day one. And that's also enough time for you to be able to get into your dorms with little issues. So that is as early as you can get in. And moving on to the next part, let's talk about getting to Tuscaloosa. So Tuscaloosa, if you don't know where it is, we're in Alabama. We're in the central part of the state on the west side of the state. So we're about 1 hour drive from Birmingham, which is the largest city in the state of Alabama. Birmingham is about 1 million people. And the airport, Birmingham Shuttlesworth Airport, which is airport code BHM, is the closest major airport to Tuscaloosa. So most of our students fly into BHM and then they'll reserve a shuttle to come to the campus. Now, our office will be providing pickup services a few days before the start of classes, but typically this is right before classes begin. So if you're coming in a little bit earlier than the weekend prior to classes, you may not be able to get that shuttle. You might have to book a separate shuttle, but there are some services that are reasonable, like groom transport, I think is about $60 or so. It's not that hard and it can be pre-booked online before you ever arrive based on your flight schedule. On-campus housing, I really was trying to stress this. Right now, I think the last quota was 8,600 residents. This number may have changed. They opened up a large dorm recently, so I think I need to update the slide. But we have 33 residence halls. They're beautiful dorms. They're great. But again, 8,600 spots for 10,000 plus freshmen, it's not enough spots for all of our students. So you need to apply early and make sure you've paid your deposit before you do this. There's a whole process for this, and you should have honestly received a lot of communications about this post admission. So once you've been admitted and they've begun sending out communications, you're going to be getting emails about orientation and about housing and everything else that you need to do. One of the options for your on-campus housing is the Rotary House. So if you're interested in that, we have that information on our webpage. This is a multicultural learning community. And so what this means is it's got a course requirement. It is meant for international interests. We have a mix of American and international students living there. It is co-ed, so men and women live in the same house, but not the same rooms. Generally, we split it by floor, where the men live on one floor and the women live on the other floor. But that is an option. It is very limited. I will say that. The spaces are quite limited, but that housing application, you still have to apply for housing, but you separately have to submit an application to be considered for Rotary as well. That information is on our housing page. For those of you who might be older or have to look off campus, there are a lot of housing options off campus. This city has a ton of apartments in town, in which case you can look to those. The main thing I want to stress here is be really careful when you're looking at the housing to look at distance, the actual distance in miles from campus, to get a better idea of how far away it is and whether or not there's transportation available. Look at that. And finally, do not sign a contract or a lease with any apartment complex until you are here and can see it in person. The reason why is if you sign a lease, it's a legal document. You are required to pay that company for the duration of the time included on that lease. And so if for any reason, you get here and you don't like the apartment, you're like, oh, this isn't as nice as I thought it was going to be, and you change your mind, unfortunately, you can't change your mind. You will be obligated to pay that company and that housing. And so I want you to just be aware, you can search, you can look at it, you could start the application process, but you should not sign any contract or lease until you've actually physically shown up here and are able to inspect the property. I've had too many students who have been stuck in really bad housing situations because of assigning their leases while they were still abroad. I'll go back to that to highlight it. I had one student who signed a lease because it said it was 5 minutes from campus. In America, we think of driving time in terms of how fast you can drive to campus. And a 5-minute drive to campus is 5 miles, or maybe about 11 to 12 kilometers. It was not 5 minutes to campus by foot. It was more like an hour and a half to 2 hours walking extremely fast. That it is not, so don't go by anything that talks about how many minutes it is away from campus. What they mean when they say minutes from campus, just consider that miles from campus. 5 miles from campus, 10 miles from campus. You need to look at the actual mileage. You need to look at where it's located in proximity to the campus. And the last thing, and I think we're going to open it up to Q&A and be able to talk a little bit more openly. Just be aware we've got some great web pages. We've got our campus visitors guide at visit.ua.edu, where you can find out a lot of things. It has maps of campus. It has history of campus. It tells you about the importance of different things that we talk about, like why we say roll tide and everything else. It's kind of like a miniature orientation of sorts. But it is going to be very helpful to you to learn more about how to get around campus. And then Tuscaloosa has a visitor's guide as well, visit tuscaloosa.com, that tells you about the city. Once you come to the university, we want you to know, like, you're part of the community. You need to be able to get engaged. And so you'll find out more about things like our river market and our amphitheater and the museums here in town and things like that, and like nature trails. We have some great facilities in this town that hopefully you'll take advantage of. A lot of things for young people, a lot of things for families. So just definitely take a look at that before you come here. And just to leave it, I will share the screen again with our contact information. But with that, I think I'm going to stop share, and so that we can have a conversation. So I am going to, sorry, go ahead.
If I can interrupt for a second, and I want to say thank you to you, to Casey and Trung, for manning the chat room and answering questions in real time. But as you were doing your presentation, I want to talk about some other information that may be pertinent. So orientation session. Currently, you will do that from Alabama, but per my knowledge from the orientation office is that the dates so far go up to June. So don't be alarmed, do not panic that you will not find a date in either end of July or early August. what will happen is they will open more dates in early April. And those new dates will most likely definitely include end of July and August. So go in April and check regularly for MyBama to see the new orientation dates. There will be plenty of opportunity to attend MyBama or Bama Bound. If you do come after the start of classes, I guess you can do an orientation session on your own. Do you want to add to that, Charter? Because I'm not sure how that process is.
Yeah, so after the start of classes, so the last orientation sessions are, I think, the Friday before classes begin. So that would be like the August 18th, I believe. And that is the very last section. So anyone arriving after that date, that weekend before classes start, I mean, basically, you would think you got here before classes, that's early enough, right? Well, our orientations stop almost 4 or 5 days before the beginning of classes. That's for the general orientation that are for all students. And so if you get here a little bit late, what you have to do is you'll have to go in person to the orientation office, and they'll work with you to lift your hold. You'll be kind of on your own to go meet with advisors on campus for your academic program to get the advising and get the registration pins lifted so that you can register for classes if you haven't done so already. So it is really difficult for students who are arriving a little late to be able to get that taken care of. As far as our orientation for International Student and Scholar Services, we do have an online orientation and check-in process. You can do our orientation online at any point. Like literally you can right now go to our orientation page and review all of our videos and do our orientation quiz. You won't be able to check in with us until you've actually physically arrived and you have, you know, all of your immigration records, but you'll be able to do most of the other things. But that's just your immigration status. All that does is allows us to validate your immigration records after you've arrived to the US. That's a completely separate process. And again, that's all online. But unfortunately, the orientation for Bama Bound, which is the orientation for all incoming undergraduate students, freshmen, transfer, everybody, that's done on a schedule that's spread out over the summer. Somebody asked, when is it? It is that orientation, Bama Bound, is not online, it's in person. Now, our orientation for international students is online. It's, again, anybody can access it. It is, I'm gonna see if I can't find it here really quickly. And that way you can take a look to your heart's content. Our international orientation and check in, I'm dropping it here in the chat. Like very literally, you can find our orientation guide, our orientation slides. We've got a playlist on YouTube of the same videos, but they're embedded here. And it kind of takes you step by step through the immigration part about like maintaining status, about some of the things that we think are important to international students in their adjustment to the US.
The main Bama Bound orientation session is in person, like Charles said. And once you register through MyBama, you will get a follow-up email from the orientation office with all the details, the schedule. Keep in mind that most of them are a 2-day event. So you'll do first day with general policy regulations, information about UA, and usually the second day, half day is more information on campus resources and student clubs. And then the second half of the second day will be when you meet with your advisor in the college of your major, and that's when you'll register for classes. The registration is on the spot, so do not worry that you're not able to register yourself for classes. You will not be able to register classes until you see an academic advisor. Okay, and one other thing, there was a question on major changes. So major need to match both the admission letter and the I-20. What's on the I-20 has to match usually the admission letter. If UA is not a major specific admission college, so we can change your major after admission. Just keep in mind that takes time. You can change your major in MyBama if you have been admitted. if you do that, please email me and let us know that you've changed your major. We do not get a notification of students going through their MyBama portal and changing majors. If that happens, there's going to be a mismatch between, you know, when you get to your academic advisor, what you have on your I-20, what's on your admission letter. So if that's something you're considering, please get in touch with both the admissions office and then with ISSS office to make sure everything matches. It's good for your visa interview. And if there's any mismatching on information, I'm assuming they'll scrutinize that a little more.
Yeah, and I will say for our part, the I-20 update. So I know the students on the call may not understand this or maybe even necessarily understand why it's so difficult. But when there is a major change or that's changed in SOTMs and the admissions area of the UA system, the screen is called SOTMs. We actually have to work with you and the registrar's office to have that reflected in the student learner record too, for it to push over to our system so that we can update the I-20. So sometimes those major changes, even though the first step may have been taken care of, there's several steps in between before we might be able to update the I-20. And that can be a little bit of a delay. So it's not an instantaneous thing. Like when I say it takes a little while, it sometimes takes us a week to get that off because there's like several other steps before it ever gets to push to update the I-20. We will do it as quickly as we can. We want the information to be accurate, but it sometimes is a real challenge for us. Something about after a student actually is enrolled here and those major changes seem to push a little bit more cleaner. And I think that that's because the registrar and the major advising unit are working together to make those updates and do it very quickly. But changes between admissions decision and the start of their academic term, for whatever reason, it seems to be there is a delay in getting those things processed without getting a couple of other departments involved.
Can you talk more to this difference between what's on the admission letter and the CIP code? We have a student with a cybersecurity major. UA's major name is cybersecurity, and the CIP code is something that is not only similarly very different. Will that cause any issues? No, it will not. It is what it is officially. So I'm gonna do a quick share screen. I'm gonna show you my page here. So in this, what I'm showing you is on getting your I-20, your DS 2019, and your student visa. You have the information about getting your I-20, but then there's the part about understanding the I-20. And I talked about that earlier. And it talks about all the different parts of your I-20. And one of the things it talks about is your program of study. So this will take you to a wiki page that will open up. And so in this, we explain on your program of study how the major may not match exactly what is used for the SIP code. Now, the Department of Education has a SIP code list, and that is what is officially reflected on the I-20. The I-20 that we issue and the major that we have is attached to the closest aligned SIP code. And so when you look at the Office of Institutional Effectiveness or Office of Institutional Research, so I'm going to click on this right now. It's going to open this page. Do y'all see degree programs offered by college and school? Okay. So if I go down and you said it was cybersecurity. Okay. So going down to the College of Engineering, cybersecurity has the code 11.1003. That is the SIP code affiliated with the cybersecurity program. So what is 11.1003? If I go back, and I apologize because I can't really see my information here. If I go back to this section again and get to the Department of State SIP code list, our Department of Education SIP code list.
So 11. Do the quick zip code. 11.1003 comes up as computer and information systems security. So that is how it should probably be listed on the I-20. It'll have 11.1003 major computer and information systems security. We call it cybersecurity. The Department of Education officially calls it computer and information systems security. It's the closest related major. What the US government calls a major and what the University of Alabama call a major don't always align. And this is true for every university in the United States. We often universities will begin calling things and they'll start shifting the name of a program to more closely align the professional names for the program, whereas the Department of Education still uses an older terminology. Again, they don't always match, but that has been matched as closely as we can officially, and that has been done by again the folks over in the registrar's office. It's been approved by the Board of Trustees and by our Alabama Commission on Higher Education, who reviews every single major. So every single major has an affiliated zip code. You can see it here. And sometimes they're not necessarily lined up exactly word for word with what the US government would call it. Because you can see here, we have Health Education and Promotion Masters and Health Education and Promotion PhD program, but they both use different zip codes. Because when they approved the Masters, it was under one zip code. When they approved the PhD, it was under a different zip code. So that's, anyway, don't worry about the difference. What you have is accurate on your I-20.
Thank you for that. Quick question on housing. There was a question about honors housing. How is that? Do you have any information on, can they apply for anything outside of Ridgecrest?
So honors housing is usually, so that's almost like a living learning community. And what that means is you don't have to live in honors housing, but if you want to be in honors housing, they're going to assign you to a specific residence hall with other honors students, and only honors students can live in that hall. And so the living learning communities, which you'll find on the housing website, that they are, you have to be specially accepted into those living learning communities. There's usually requirements for you to do certain things with that program. There's often a course that's attached to it. Some of the living learning communities have professors who live within the dorms with you and meet with you regularly. So you would have to look at that separately. You'll still submit a regular housing application, but you'll also apply for the living learning community to be considered for placement in that.
Okay. There was a question about final high school transcripts, specifically about the WIAC results, but I'm gonna just talk about this generally. We prefer if you bring your final high school transcripts or submit them prior to beginning of the fall term. However, we have some space if that's not available, you can still submit them within a month or two. Just keep in mind, you have to submit them prior to registration opening for the next term. So if you're coming for fall and your WIAC results are not issued yet, or your higher secondary certificate in countries like Bangladesh or India, or your final results are not issued yet, you have about 2 months to submit those before you can register for spring 2024 term. So we have some leeway there. I think another question for you, Chara, was what can the university do regarding the visa process? Is there anything we can do for the students as far as support or in that process? Any kind of letters or anything like that?
The letters that you've been granted, those should be, so your letter of admission is really the most important letter. There isn't really anything that our office can do at this stage. There was a point during the pandemic when we would, where to get expedited appointments, there was a request that a letter had to state, a more or less a support for the student to get an expedited appointment. I don't believe that's the case anymore. I think the admission letter and the I-20 start date is now sufficient to show evidence that you have the need for an expedited appointment to meet a certain deadline. We have been automatically adding text to the remarks section on the I-20s regarding the latest possible arrival dates to take care of any late arrivals. So that text is already there on the I-20 and has satisfied every visa officer that I have interacted with, or embassy or consulate, rather than having a separate letter to the effect of late arrivals. So those are the things that have been done already. If you, you're more than welcome to reach out if you're having issues, but the way, unfortunately, the visa process is set up is that you are the applicant for your visa. And so you are the one that both controls the ability to make inquiries about your visa, and you have, you're the only one that can really set up the appointments. So we can't really do much to affect your appointment date. We can't expedite the visa interview date for you. We can't impact the outcome of your visa application. All we can do is we can issue you the I-20, and of course you have your admission letter and any supporting documents for your financials. These are the things that are going to have the biggest impact on your visa interview and your visa interview decisions. I wish there was more. This session was meant to kind of go over some of the tips to prepare for your visa interview. And I would say, do prepare for your visa interview, be able to talk to why you chose the degree that you have and the institution that you have, and why the University of Alabama is where you want to come, and to be able to answer so truthfully and clearly communicate that. And then to clearly communicate your ties to the home country and be able to demonstrate that without being asked for it. That's the other thing. I think a lot of people say, well, they never asked me for this. Like, believe it or not, it's not the visa officer's job to ask you to provide information. They may ask, and you need to be able to provide it, but there are certain things they're expecting you to be able to present to them and to demonstrate to them very clearly without prodding. It is, I know it sounds backwards, but that is a kind of a thing that they need to do. I would say, as far as what our office can do is if you have questions, if you have doubts, and you've read through our website and you've gone through all the materials that we provide and really have gone through all of it and still have questions, you can reach out to us with any specific questions, and we'll do our best to answer that or address it or provide those resources. But yeah.
An additional question for that, there was somebody asking if their parent wants to travel with them to UA for move-in day or first day or orientation. What's the process for that?
They can apply for a visitor visa, a B1, B2. They will be on their own to do that. It's not guaranteed that they can come. You cannot sponsor your parent as a dependent. We kind of talked on the F2 and J2 visas. You can't do that for parents. You can't do that for siblings. So if your parent wants to do that, if they already have a visitor visa in their passport, great. If they don't, they need to apply for a B1, B2 visa. I know that the appointments are even more backlogged for B1, B2 because that's not the high priority for the US government. The priority is on employment visas and student visas. But they can go through that visa application process if they would like. there is a template on inviting family for how to, what needs to be included on that, but they would need to go through that process and explain why they're coming. And, again, it would be to say, hey, my child has been admitted to the university. I'm traveling with them to help them get moved in and to settle into their housing before I return. They have to establish their ties to the home country, like they've got a job that they're returning to, that they've only been permitted a certain amount of time to leave work. All that is kind of covered under our family section on our website. If you go to look at that, we have in our subsections of our pages, and I'll share. Actually, just drop. Hold on, let me close this out. Let me drop a link to the information resources for family. Sorry, my computer is not copying and pasting properly. If you go to this page, it has information about dependents, but then there's a section called inviting family to visit. And this is there. The question that we get quite a lot is, can you write a letter to invite my parent to come? We don't do that. And I'll tell you why. I have met many visa officers, and all of them have told me your letter is worthless. You are not the person inviting the parent. The person inviting the parent is the student. The student is inviting their own parent to visit. The university is not officially inviting a parent to visit with their child. And so we're not sponsoring the visa. We're not paying for the flights. We're not making the accommodations or anything like that. And so they've told us that our letters are ignored by the consulate officers. And so we over 10 years ago stopped issuing those letters. We just don't do it any longer. And so, but we do have some guidance on how you can prepare your parents or your family to be able to visit, and the letter that you can write yourself to explain, why they're coming. It is not very common for parents to come with their children for international students, but we do have some who come. So just, look over that information and have them look into getting a tourist visa or B1, B2 visitor visa. But just be aware that it is sometimes really challenging and it may be denied. It's not something that's going to be guaranteed, but our letter would have no impact on their ability to come. I have with one student wrote 3 separate letters trying to get her mom to be able to visit, and she had 3 separate visa denials. And so it had no impact on things. Who didn't write a letter of support and invitation? The student. The student never wrote their own letter of invitation in that whole process, despite me asking them to. Like, you really need to be the one to do that. And they relied on my letter to do the work, and the embassy just looked at it and they said, who is this man, Charter Morris, to your mother or father? Like, he's not related to them. He's not personally inviting that person. So again, look over the webpage. It gives you a lot of good pointers, gives your family member a lot of good pointers for what they might need to do to prepare.
Thank you, Char. And as it's already 10:30, if there are no other questions, we want to thank you again for joining us today. I want to thank Char, Trong, and Casey for all the information they've shared with everybody. Keep in mind that we will email the presentation and the recording to all the attendants. It may take me about 24 to 48 hours, so don't expect it quite instantaneously after we end this meeting, but we will email it out. If you do have questions for the admissions office, please email intl@ua.edu, and that can relate to a new admission letter, a new major, deferral, anything like that, or scholarship questions. For any questions for the ISSS office, you can email international@ua.edu, and one of their lovely staff members will answer you in a timely manner. So thank you again for joining us. Hope to see you on campus either in the summer or fall, and roll tide.
Roll tide, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.